So Max, happy to have you here. I found you and you founded the goodDOG agency and had a background in journalism and figured, hey, come on the podcast and let's chat about what you're doing because it seems like you're taking a different framework when it comes to marketing that most people aren't taking. So I found it'd be interesting to talk about that and how you got into it on the
Yeah,
front. So happy to have you here.
sure. Yeah, happy to be here as well, Josh.
So you were doing like journalism and I know you went to Lehigh University. Like what were you doing in journalism and that led you to marketing because they are related in some sort of way, but going from journalism to the marketing is almost like changing teams in my
Uh,
view. I don't know if that's how it actually is. I don't know much about that space.
yeah, it's a different way. I've been in brand marketing, media sales. I've had a lot of jobs in sort of marketing and advertising after 3 years on Wall Street out of college. I sort of moved into this realm of sort of storytelling through brand. And my wife's a documentary filmmaker and a photojournalist, and had moved to sort of rural America, got out of living in cities, and we had the opportunity to take over a almost 100-year-old newspaper and sort of reimagine what a sustainable business model might look like for local independent journalism. Um, or maybe that wasn't what we were given, but the thing that was interesting to us and the challenge that we wanted to take on. And so still brand strategy, business strategy, sort of like we like to call ourselves brand fixers. That's what goodDOG does. We're a really sure set of hands in the thinking, high level doing of building brand and business. Um, but yeah, my wife and I also took on this idea of sort of reimagining the future of local independent journalism.
So you were in Wall Street in the early 2000s.
Yeah,
What was that like with the put a .com behind your name and become worth 50 million overnight?
yeah. So I joined. I was there from 2004 to like 2007. So I worked on the broker dealer side of things, and then at a hedge fund, a long short value hedge fund.
Did you get out before the world was destroyed and no one survived?
Yeah, I think people are still surviving, and I still
Yeah.
think there's a lot standing. But yes, I did. I left in like the beginning of 2007. So I don't know. Luck has it. Whatever. Life is a lot about decisions and luck, and that was something that happened.
Yeah, because I see behind you have a picture that says ask more questions.
Yeah, I'm in the newspaper office. I'm in the editing bay of the newspaper office. So
So
yeah,
was
that's
so was going into journalism always the goal and you just ended up on Wall Street because when everyone comes out of school, they're just like, well, I need a job and I got a job here and this seems cool, so let's do it.
yeah. I Journalism was not the goal. Sports marketing and sort of like brand building was the goal. But I used to caddy during the summers, and I grew up in just north of New York City, and so two guys I used to caddy for said, I'll teach you everything. You could be on Wall Street. And I was actually, business major. Lehigh, I was really terrible at numbers. Finance and accounting were not my thing. I was more of the marketing and the philosophy minor guy. So yeah, I did that for 3 years. It was like sort of like my MBA.
Where were you caddying at?
A place called Tamarack Country Club.
Tamarack Country Club. Is
Yeah.
that northern New York,
Yeah,
southern?
it's on the border of Connecticut and New York.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was that like? What were the conversations you were hearing on the golf course that you're able to divulge? Because if you ever played golf, especially with those sort of folks that you're caddying for, you might hear some things that turn your head a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, yeah,
Not
I don't know. I don't know what you're looking for there. I don't know what I'm supposed to divulge, but yeah, I mean, I think that uh, your job is to serve people. Your job is to help people. Your job is to trade on your knowledge and hustle really hard and make somebody's life easier because they're trying to do something really hard, which is hit a little white ball with a little head of a golf club into a really little hole very far away. And so it's part, you know, understanding the person, supporting them mentally, morally, and physically, but also helping, and helping them get there. It's you're a bit of a coach. Those are really good caddies are sort of mental and physical coaches.
Yeah, working that kind of job definitely gives you the sort of soft skills that people that don't have those sort of jobs growing up lack, which when you're working like a caddy job, it could be a little hard sometimes when you see your friends or people that you know not working, having fun, especially like in the summertime and you're like out there carrying clubs in the summer heat, walking up hills, cleaning balls, cleaning clubs. But how did those soft skills translate to what you did on Wall Street and then going from Wall Street to did you immediately start the newspaper? Did you go into journalism? Share how that journey came to fruition.
Yeah. So in I was still living in New York City, and I thought I wanted to be a restaurateur, so I ended up with a brief stint at, or just involved with restaurants, and I had a brief stint working at Gramercy Tavern for Union Square Hospitality Group, which is like sort of Danny Meyer's enterprise.
Yeah, setting the
Um,
table.
yeah, setting the table, Red setting the table, and wrote his assistant a note or him a note. And I was like, I want to come work for you. I'm a marketing business guy, but I just spent the last 3 years on Wall Street. Like I can help your business. And he was like, that's nice and cute. Um, I'm glad you're interested. And I was like, that's not a good enough answer for me. So I printed out the email and walked into Gramercy Tavern and sat down for lunch 3 days in a row. I gave myself 3 days to sit at the bar and see if he walked in because that's what he said at setting the table. And day one, he walked in, walked right up to him and said, I'm that guy that wrote this note. You said you liked it. I would really like a chance to like talk with you guys about coming to work with you. And so I worked there for a bunch of months in the summer and realized that like that wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. Um, but yeah, really cool learning experience. Learned a lot about restaurants and how that all worked. And I was a server and worked for the maitre d, helping seat people and take reservations and volunteered in the kitchen. And um, that after Wall Street is a grave departure of you went from sitting at the table, going around to being entertained or entertaining at dinners to like seating people and helping them. And it was great. It was a really great experience. It's just not the thing that I necessarily wanted to do. But yeah, so I did that for a couple months, and then I went to work for a media sales and sports sponsorship outfit out of New York City. Did that for a bunch of years. Realized that like marketing has this awesome ability to influence people and affect change. And I didn't want to sell more phone plans or participate in selling more phone plans or all that kind of stuff. I wanted to actually, my thought process of uh, building a more conscious society was something I was interested in, and I wanted to use that, marketing's ability to influence people and affect change in the media space to do something different. And so I sort of went into that realm, um, and yeah, that's where I've been for like the last 15 years, working at, with companies, founder built, sort of purpose driven brands. I don't know what you want to call them right now, sort of making trying to mainstream a conscious consumer thought process using capitalism as a means of building, a more conscious society.
That was very resilient of you to go in and hunker down at the bar to wait for Danny Meyer, who wrote Setting the Table, who talks about like hospitality and business and all that almost lost art sort of deal that a lot of people have gotten away from. How did I was curious because I have read the book and read about him. How did he react when you like walked up to him?
Uh, he looked at me like I probably was on drugs for 3 seconds, and then just like a wry smile sort of came across his face. He was like, all right, man, I'll play your game, And he was like, hey, go sit at the bar. I'm about to have lunch with the COO of Union Square Hospitality. They're gonna come and chat with you. I mean, life is about like choices and luck and um, continuing on and pushing through. And I don't know, it's just like what you make of it. I mean, this is also coming from like a privileged white guy, and I was fortunate. I'm fortunate enough to be in certain situations, but like you could either do nothing with it or you could do something with it. And so like you gotta push through. You got like nothing is free in this life. You gotta take chances. You gotta take risks.
Yeah, and if you think things are free and you're seeking out free items, you're definitely giving up more than you are bargaining for. And a lot of people don't realize that. So you got the job, Union Square, serving, hospitality. Then you mentioned you were transitioning to which area that you were mentioned earlier.
Yeah, marketing and sort of like a media sales company selling media.
Got it. And so you went from Wall Street, hospitality to selling media. What what did that look like after that?
Yeah, I think, when you are running around the country, trying to get people to buy media from you, and trying to learn about their brand and business, trying to sell them something. You learn a lot about life and a lot about people, and it's a different kind of service-based kind of idea. And you learn a lot about business. You get to learn a lot about people's, who their target consumer is and how that all works. And I think the coolest aspect of that job was I was trying to figure out how to get my company involved within NASCAR. A bunch of suits in New York City, suit wearing sports marketing and media salespeople trying to get involved in NASCAR. And so it didn't really fit that mold, but worked my way into the business of NASCAR and met a lot of people and sort of realized that like there wasn't necessarily a spot, but it was cool. I learned a lot about people and a lot about process and a lot about businesses, learned a lot about America. A kid that grew up in and around New York City. I got to travel to a lot of different spots and see America and interact with, get out of my own bubble. And that was really a formal experience. I mean, I live in rural America now in the middle of nowhere, you know, 9/10 of a mile high in the far west Texas in the desert. We're 60 miles from the border. I'm 180 miles from a city, southeast of El Paso. So, you know, uh, this is like I'm in America. You know what I mean? Like I understand a lot of that stuff, and I think if I hadn't made choices throughout my life, I probably wouldn't have ended up here.
And when you mentioned suits in NASCAR, I don't associate wearing a suit with NASCAR at all. So I that's comical that you're like, hey, I'm with these guys in suits, working for NASCAR, traveling around the country. When you go to a NASCAR event, I doubt you'll see anyone in a suit other than a race car suit. That's the only suit that I've seen when I've gone to this sort of events. And you get people
Yeah,
from all walks of life.
sure.
And it's crazy when you go from like New York, where it's very like go, 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 and people we'll say like down south, people are slower and whatnot. But then you start to talk to the different people, and even though the people may talk a little slower and they have their funny little southern sayings, a lot of those people know a lot about business, and especially being in Texas, you're right near probably some oil rig somewhere. If you're in West Texas, I'm sure you see some drilling or things out there, and getting a sense of the jobs that make America run that people don't even think about.
Yeah, I mean we're a couple 100 miles south of the Permian Basin, which is like that really active oil play out here in West Texas, in the country. But yeah, yeah, those are we're the town is people that are ranchers and people working the land and working cattle and working livestock and that's what our country is. It's not people in office towers for sure.
So after working all of these jobs, you worked on Wall Street, hospitality, then you're doing marketing, working with NASCAR. You end up in a small city in West Texas where what's the population of where you live?
Less than 2,000 people.
Less than 2,000 people. Do you know everyone, or is that just like a myth?
No, I mean everybody pretty much has a face for sure. Yeah.
So now, did you move out there knowing that you wanted to buy the
No.
the Sentinel? You moved out there first, then you bought the Sentinel. Like, I want to hear about that.
Yeah, we moved out here in 2016. We're like, there's going to be a pandemic in a couple of years. We should really get out of the cities and like establish ourselves.
Wait, what? You knew the
That was a
pandemic
joke.
was coming?
That was a joke. No, that was a joke. Yeah. No, we were my wife and I were recently married, and we got married out here. We bought a house out here. Thought we would spend sort of like halftime here, halftime in New York, and yeah, we just sort of like 2016. My wife's a journalist, and the election goes to Trump on November 7th, and she was like, "There's a change in the makeup of what we think, what's going to happen in this country, and we live 60 miles from the border. Like, I need to go make some work. Let's get out of here." And I was like, "Yeah, let's get out. We're in an echo chamber. Let's get out of here." And so we left, and we got to meet Robert and Rosario, who used to own the paper. They ran it for about 30 years. The paper's almost 100 years old, the Big Bend Sentinel. It's also a sister paper called El Internacional, which is a bilingual paper for the border. Also once a week. And yeah, they just said we're going to retire. Rosario was losing her eyesight. They wanted to like do something different with their life, and they said, "You're a journalist. You're a marketing person. Do you want to do this?" And we said, "Maybe, no, I don't know," and sort of came up with this idea of um, a journalism has always been in the news and information business, but actually the business is building community. And it just so happens it's manifested itself through newspaper and digital and doom scrolling and all that kind of stuff, but what might it look like to build an experiential place for people to interact and get off the page, get off the interweb, and interact with each other and exchange information in the name of getting provided information, and how, given the tourism-based economy that exists here, and the capitalistic society that we're in, how might we create a business model that sort of supports that and stands that up? And so the idea we came up with was the Big Bend Sentinel is the paper, the hero paper. The Sentinel is a third space. It's a cafe, coffee shop, retail shop, restaurant, event space, and it's all of a piece. People that are supporting one or supporting the other. We have been doing it for 5 years and sort of came into this with the assumption that news and information is free on the interweb, and that's what society is. We can't fight the last 25 years, but what we can do is sell people what they want, and people want to be amidst other folks that are like-minded and not like-minded. They want to interact with people, and they want to pay for experiences, and people want to buy $7 matcha lattes, and people want to buy curated retail items, and they want an experience. And if we can give them an experience that can fund the thing that is really important, and that people don't necessarily want to pay for, but they need it when they want it. And it doesn't, that's not the way journalism works. It's not just like ta-da and then disappears. It needs to always be done. And so that was the model we came up with, given the confines of what existed.
So you have like a building that you distribute the newspaper out of, and it's like a shop. Like I'm attempting to paint a picture in my head of what this looks like.
Yeah, it's a building. It's a 4,500 square foot building, in the middle of town, just off the main drag. And it's a cafe restaurant, and an event space. And there's like retail that sort of flows throughout it. Communal tables everywhere for people to interact with each other. There's plenty of awesome space for people to sit outside and enjoy. And within the confines of that 4,500 square feet indoor space is a 500 square foot office, and that office houses the newspaper.
That's pretty cool. I don't think a lot of people know that owning a newspaper, especially before social media, was actually a huge business. I know Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway owned the Buffalo News, and they were known for like having the most news on their newspaper and not selling as many ads. And then, it was like the most read paper. And essentially, instead of buying like a billboard or Google ads or social media ads, all you had was the newspaper, because the newspaper's
Right.
delivered every day. And I know that was a big business for them. And then obviously, most recently, I know Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post, and probably not a lot of people know that like the New York Times is like publicly traded. I mean, it's basically a publicly traded company. So
Sure.
how is what you're doing at the Sentinel different than the news that someone like me who doesn't, you know, read the newspaper, how does that experience differ other than you mentioned more community building and, you know, bringing people together rather than just like, let's say something controversial where one side feels one way and the other side feels the other way and everyone just argues back and forth.
Yeah, I think the difference between commentators and pundits um, and journalists are that's there's a difference there. Even Sean Hannity, who it might look like he's supposed to be, or Rachel Maddow, or I don't know anybody that screams really loud about the way that they feel. Those aren't necessarily journalists. They're opinion makers. And so the difference between opinion and journalism is sort of like we're in this weird stage, right, where people conflate one with the other. Um, and but that being said, I mean, you know, I can't necessarily speak to what your experience is, but what we created isn't really different than what the New York Times created. If you look at it, right? They're in the business of they have a brand, and that's a branded business. We're a branded business. They make money on not just selling news and advertising and subscriptions to the news. They make money on this thing called games. They make money on this thing called cooking. They have other elements that are not news focused that make that business sing, and support the thing that's really important, support the reason for being. We're no different. You know, we sell a lot of other things, but the reason that we're in business is to provide news and information and journalism. So, that's to make it really simple. I know it's like wildly different. We're not a publicly traded company, and but it's building brand by building community and selling people what they want. It's product market fit. We're not trying to jam crap into people's minds if they don't want it. We're giving people what they want.
Yeah, because I remember growing up, people would buy the subscription for the Wall Street Journal because it has the brand influence that people feel like if I read the Wall Street Journal, I'm getting real news. Like I'm getting the best information possible,
Mhm.
which when I'm reading something, I don't care what the person's opinion is. I just want the facts to be correct, whether I agree with them or not. And as like you were alluding to people that I see like on the news, I mean, they're just to me, the way I look at them, they're almost just actors that know how to read what's put in front of them. It's not like they're telling you their actual thoughts and feelings. Like people are typing and writing the narrative for them to be the trusted person that people connect with to share the news that the not the news person who's reading it to you, but the news organization wants to get their thoughts through that person to their audience. Is
Yeah,
that
TV. Yeah, yeah,
is that
yeah.
wrong?
No, I think like TV programming, right? Like there's only so many times you can watch Peter Jennings or Ted Koppel. I'm dating myself, but like there's only so many times there's like the person at the top of the news hour. Um, once a night giving you the news of the day. This is how it used to be, right? And then there's other programming that happens on that channel. Um, it's a 24-hour news network. So CNN has and Fox News has a gazillion people sitting around a round table that are not journalists that are just giving you their opinions. They're political consult. I mean, it says what they are, but that doesn't mean that people understand that differently. It's like information overload. What do you even pay attention to? How does that work? So we're a weekly paper. We're giving you news and information basically like once a week. If you live in the middle of nowhere, you don't need news and information more than once a week. Like there's a reason why I think that should exist. But that doesn't mean that we can't be in the habit of in somebody's daily habit. So we're selling them something else that they need and want every other day.
Yeah, I mean the most eye-catching stories that people see are like whenever there's like a murder trial and it's like a big long story and it goes on for months and months and months and people are like tuning in to see what happens. But most stories that you see on the news, they come out with the story. They're like, most recently in like Baltimore, that bridge collapsed and it was on for maybe a day or two and that was it. But no one's talking about like what's the impact of the bridge collapsing, whose jobs are affected, what's that going to do to the economy. It's basically like bridge crash, people passed away, there was a couple survivors, mayhem. And that's like pretty much it. It's not actually like diving in to what is going to be the aftermath effect and how it's going to impact the person that's actually watching the news. Is that something that the Sentinel does that's a little bit different?
We're a local newspaper, so we're not going to report like we
National
reported
news.
on the, yeah, that's not something that we do. But I bet you if you lived in Baltimore, that news story is still at the top of the, it's above the fold on the page and it's above the fold. Like people are talking about the aftermath of that. What are the companies being, hired to rebuild this bridge? How is that bidding process going? Is there a crooked politician involved? Like all that stuff. But
In
like,
Baltimore,
that's,
most definitely, there's a crooked
that's
politician.
sure. And I think that's great. But like, that's not something we focus on. Plenty of people are doing that. Parachute journalism is like what, drives all that kind of stuff.
What
And
is parachute journalism
you,
for
you
someone like
come
me who
in,
doesn't know?
yeah, you could drop in journalism, you parachute in, you're waiting for where's the shooting? You come in, you report on the shooting. There's a gazillion articles about this. You report on the shooting and then you leave. And it's like, well, what happened to the families? What happened to the school system? What happened to what happened to any of that stuff? We've moved on to the next bridge collapse or the shooting or the wildfire or the this or the thing that's going to grab somebody else's attention. Like it's almost information overload. And so we're not in that business. Like if you want to learn about what's going on out here, if you live here, that's what we're reporting on. You want to learn about like real stories about the border, not like some politicians standing in front of a piece of border wall that's built or talking to like that's something different. You want to know what's going on the border? Like pick up our paper, go to our website. You can really learn about what it's like to live on the border.
When you said parachute journalism, I envisioned you parachuting in on Danny Meyer when you were sharing that story earlier.
I mean, pretty much, right? Like I disrupted his day, but that's like what social media is, right? He's just going about his day in person. And then I'm like, hey, that's what social media is. It's like then something blows up and if you go on Twitter, you're going to watch or Facebook, you're going to watch somebody cleaning a carpet, you're going to watch some whatever it is because it just like disrupts your day. And is that helping us? Is that making the world a better place? Is that
Yeah.
like useful? No, I'm not into that. I'm not interested in that kind of
Except
stuff.
Danny Meyer couldn't just like swipe up and tell you
He
to
couldn't swipe
disappear.
up. He could not tell me to disappear. So he gave me a raw smile and they gave me a chance. And it was an amazing opportunity. And I wouldn't have traded it for the world. And I was lucky enough to have sit down across from him at a small little gathering, drinking a beer, and was like, "There's no way you remember me, man, but this happened so many years ago." And lo and behold, he was like, "Actually, I sort of do remember you because you were the first person that did it, but many people did it afterwards." He's like, "But you were the first person with zero restaurant experience that we ever hired." So um, yeah,
Sometimes hiring someone with no experience is better because they don't know anything and they're just going to listen versus someone who does things differently, may think their way's better and give you some pushback and things like that.
sure.
That's just my point of view. But did you have to do any brand fixing with the Sentinel once you took it over? Because you do run a marketing agency too, so I'd be curious to hear
Sure.
how you uh not got tricked, but sounds like a nice couple was like, hey, you know marketing and your wife is a writer. Y'all would be perfect for this sort of thing, and probably in a nice are they from like born raised Texan?
Yeah, they're born
Yeah,
and raised here.
yeah. So they probably had a nice Texas accent, you know, very friendly, but at the same time, knowing this person could possibly shoot me. Just kidding.
Yeah,
People in Texas are pretty nice, but
I'll say.
it is a free state compared to a lot of places.
Sure.
So what happened when you got in? How did you have to do some brand fixing? Because I'm sure there was things that they didn't see that you saw, being that you had such a different
Yeah, we
background.
saw a lot of value to be unlocked. I think that's sort of the most important thing that we saw was a shit ton of value. It's the oldest business in town. The archives of Far West Texas, almost 100 years old, so it's worth 100 years worth of stories and capturing the history of a place and its people. What do you do with that? It's almost overwhelming, right? Really awesome iconography from a design standpoint on the nameplate. Cowboy, vaquero and his horse and his caballero. Like, what do you do with that? at a mountain range? How do you, what is a sentinel? A sentinel is an overlooker, sort of like diving into the mythology of the thing and sort of coming out with a different kind of story that builds, not just brings more people into into the business and drives more readers and sells more ads, but like how do you make it a brand? How do you make it something that's like really important to somebody's lives and sort of is an emblem of the town? How do you tell the story of the town in a more unique way? Um, yeah, I think we've only scratched the surface. It's 5 years, 5 years in, but we've only scratched the surface on some of the things that we continue to plan to do. But I don't I don't think I would have been able to. I recently did a piece of work with a company called Lumberg Family Farms. It's like a 85-year-old family owned and operated vertically integrated business up in Northern California that makes rice. If you buy organic rice and you look in your cupboard, you probably have a bag of Lumberg in your cupboard. Um, and so
Does that rhyme? Kinda.
it might. Yeah, I'm a poet and I don't
It's
know
close.
it.
It's like close enough where Mumberg in your cupboard.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
that has a.
Lumberg in your cupboard. Um, so yeah, I don't know that what we did, what we were able to do in the way of like unlocking value out of what existed, a vertically integrated business. Vertical supply chain means like you grow, you package, you sell, you market, you do it sort of like soup to nuts. You aren't a business that's like a marketing and sales organization that goes and finds somebody to make the product and build the product and package the product. You literally do it all the way up from seed to sale, right? Not
Basically a
that
farmer.
seed to sale, seals. Yes, a farmer. So yeah, the board is farmers, Lundbergs, fourth generations. So, anyways, like I don't know that we would have been able to think through that in a way that I was that I don't know that if I hadn't done what we did or started to do it, at least with the Sentinel here in Marfa, I don't know that I would have been able to be as effective as I was for Lundberg. And I'm interested. I'm super interested in like give me the unsexy old school businesses. If you're like some D2C thing that just started and you're burning a bunch of VC cash, like don't call me, not the right person. You have something really cool and different, unique. You have some actual value that exists within your business and you're trying to figure out a way how to unlock it. Like I've been doing that for a long time. I really think I unlocked the keys of the castle with Lundberg, and I only knew how to do that because of unless you do it yourself, you don't know, right? You gotta take that opportunity, take that chance.
Yeah, that's how I feel about our company right now, 369 Financial, is I feel like I've been doing all the right things and I have all the pieces of the puzzle. I'm just not sure how all the pieces of the puzzle go together in terms of like building a brand, because the worst part about a business is if you're a secret and no one knows who you are. Because if no one knows who you are, then you're not going to have any customers. And if you have no customers, then you
You
burn
don't
through a
have a
bunch of
business.
cash and the salespeople, if you're running a company that's running with venture capital money, that runway's got to be long and strong, and the salespeople got to be able to sell. Otherwise, you're just, paying salaries, and people are just sitting on TikTok at their desk.
Sure. Sure.
So, what is in your definition of like perceived brand value? Because the iPhone is not the best phone, but people think it is. And that Apple brand is just so strong that they just pretty much come out with anything and people buy it. It's like almost people are like brainwashed because of the perceived brand value.
Mhm.
How do you see that, like from your lens? Because I'm sure you look at marketing way different than I look at marketing.
Yeah, I think it's all storytelling, right? Like at the top, you had said, how did you get into journalism? Journalism is a form of storytelling.
Mhm.
Um, my wife makes documentary films. She's a photojournalist, making a photo that, framing a photo, telling a story without any words of like something that's like frozen in time. That's a form of storytelling. So, you know, everyone's in this, a lot of people say they're in the story to making a piece of content. You're a content maker. This is some kind of form of storytelling about, your business. So, um, yeah, I can't necessarily speak about Apple. I think there's plenty of people
Not
articulated
Apple
that.
in particular, but like, how do people come to the point where they're like, I'm never buying anything except this brand, through storytelling, like
How do
connecting
they
with the
fall in love with it?
audience.
How does it become a badge? All that kind of stuff.
Because I
Like,
remember when I was growing up, Microsoft came out with the Zune, which was actually better than the iPod. But then Apple came out with like, hey, Max, you could have 1,000 songs in your pocket. And then it just like blew up. Like everyone at school had like the iPod, then the iPod mini, then the iPod touch. Like it was just like one thing after the other. It was just like selling the same product, just like a little bit different and just selling it over and over and over. And then eventually they I like to say hit pay dirt with the iPhone, and now they're not the little company anymore that they used with the storytelling. Like they were the underdog and Microsoft was the big dog, and they used that through their storytelling. That's from what I remembered.
yeah, I mean, but they did it through storytelling. I think you said it yourself, right? They did so they evolved their story, but their story was always super tight. That's like you tell it to them, tell them that you told them, and then tell them again. Like that's as old as time. The mediums might be different. You might be doing it all digital and no physical, or all physical and no digital. It's like, how do you tell a story super succinctly, give people the feels, and how do you do it in a unique way? And so for us, like for a newspaper, it's like the asset is it's a newspaper. Like I can't get around that. I could try to swim into this whole place of like digital and fight the Googles and the Facebooks and the whomever is like, I'm never going to be that good at that. I'm a Luddite. So we knew we weren't going to be good at that, but we knew that we had something really different. And we had this moment, storytelling. We had this moment where like it's different when somebody opens up a newspaper, it just feels different. And who the hell reads newspapers anymore? So we have our regular old school subscribers, but somebody comes into town and they like, this town is about driving into the middle of nowhere and experiencing and taking it slow and looking at art and driving beautiful country. And so that just sort of fits into that moment of just like taking things slow and doing the crossword or Sudoku. Like who does that anymore? Humans do, by the way, but like who does that anymore? So just sort of making that all of a piece.
Reminds
It's
me
a
of the
brand
Sam Hunt
story.
song.
What's the same Hanzo?
It's like doing 30 in a 50, just like taking it slower and just
Yeah.
like enjoying the moment versus where you began in New York, Wall Street, just like go, 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 go. Like you wake up at 4 in the morning, all of a sudden it's like 9 at night and you're just like crashing, just like that versus like, hey, it's a beautiful day. And time seems to go a little bit slower when you're just like, hey, look at this tree. It's the wind's blowing. That's cool.
Yeah. You notice things differently. You're able to spend time doing things differently for sure. I think that's 100%. I think I've learned how to creatively think or make space for myself once I moved out here. Not It's a little harder to do in the city for sure.
Have you ever gone back to the city?
All the time I go like I don't have many clients in the rural America like me. Um, so yeah, go visit clients and I go into the city. I was just in Austin last week. Um, Week before that I was in Denver.
Did you go hang
I
out
get
with Joe
around
Rogan in Austin?
all the time. We're besties.
I bet. I
Yeah.
heard did some cool things out there, like build a comedy club, and now it's like a hub for like all these famous comedians. They all go to Austin, Texas, which is
Yeah.
basically 10 years ago, there was nothing there other than the University of Texas. Now you go there and there's just software engineers all running all over the place that are like 25, making a couple $100,000 a year, just enjoying the streets out in
Yeah.
Austin.
And that's, I think, a story, right? Like that's actually tech is, Austin's been one of the biggest tech hubs in the country for a really long period of time. Just no one ever really talked about it. And that's the story. It wasn't always Silicon Valley, like AMD, Dell, like all those companies. IBM had huge headquarters out in Austin. All those companies were always based out in Austin too. And, if you're saying this is all about story, if you're saying that Austin was a nothing town until 10 years ago, sure, it's drastically changed over the last 10 years. But yeah, like these are all stories that we tell ourselves. Joe Rogan's a masterful storyteller. You could say whatever you want to about him, but he's a masterful storyteller. He's really good at it. And so he is able to like flex and move within the confines of the way he, tells a story.
Yeah. I mean, Austin has definitely grown in the last 10 years. I remember when I worked at a large financial institution, one of the clients I worked with was like, yeah, I'm selling my condo in Austin. Google wants to buy the building and they're giving us a really good deal. And I was just like, oh, that's interesting. Austin, Texas. I've never really thought about that. And now you saw after the pandemic that you and your wife predicted 4 years ahead of time before moving to Texas, that all these tech companies were already starting to move to Texas because no state income tax. I'm sure there's a lot of land out there.
Sure,
And Austin was still a sleepy town compared to the other towns in Texas, such as Dallas, Houston,
sure,
San Antonio.
sure.
So, well, that's cool. I love your story. Get good at telling stories and
Thanks, man.
figure out a way to do it. So, we'll see everyone next time. Bye, everyone.